to the Inner Sanctum. This week, we're going to be talking about what, Andrew?
Anaheim 76. We're going to take a trip back to Anaheim, California.
And now, are you ready? I said, are you ready? All right. Peter Chris, Ace Frehley, Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons.
This is another one of those original makeup era shows that not only has been in circulation for 30 plus years, there's also a great amount of history that comes from this show. In addition to that, there's also a great amount of versions and a great amount of collecting that goes along with the show.
Yeah, both audio and video. I know before we hit record, you were talking about the Kiss Destroys Anaheim, classic bootleg from back in the day.
You mean this one?
That one. And what I find really weird is I never encountered that back in my days when I got started collecting bootlegs in 1987. So that was one that was not on my radar until I came to America in 1998. After, by that time the video was already circulating, the full audience was out there under a different title.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because I think that might have been around the same time when I got this. I actually got this at a flea market because we touched on this in the previous episode where I said that Kiss was never a B-side band. So if you wanted more music, you had to go to the unofficial recordings. You had to go to the bootlegs, the live shows, the whatever. Kiss didn't give us B-sides, and they didn't give us alternate things at the time. So again, us being huge fans, huge collectors, in 98, everything was about Kiss for me, so I wanted more. So when I saw this, I was like, man, I don't have that. And what's cool about this is this was volume 1, and you see there's the song titles down here, and I was aware of the set list of the Destroyer tour, so I just assumed, I was like, why are they just listing random songs? I didn't know that these were the only songs that were going to be on the record. I didn't know there was a part 2. So when I dropped the needle on here, I was like, why? They never opened up a show with Hotter Than Hell. That's weird. So, but I enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. And I believe I got this before I even got the video. Because I think at the time, all I had the New York 77 video, like we mentioned on the last episode. I had Largo 79 on CD, but it wasn't the full show. It was missing God of Thunder, so that way it could fit on one CD. So I think I just had, this was the only other thing that I had in addition to those two other things. I got it at a flea market. And I'm sorry I'm so long-winded on this. I just have a lot of memories about this. But I bought it, and you don't know this because you weren't in America at the time, but there was a shop in Brick, New Jersey called the Rainbow Rockatorium, run by Gary Danko. And that's who I bought this from. And it was the start of a beautiful friendship after I bought this. So there you go. And I still got it today.
Going into your record store, there were always those friendly record stores. And we had that in Binghamton and Music City in downtown Binghamton, just across the bridge, was where I was buying all my bootlegs back then. But for me, it was Fancy Fair, Fancy Feast. What was the Wicked Lester thing as well? So Simmons
I can't remember what that was. Yeah, because I mean, here's the other thing too. By the time you and I know you're older than I am, but by the time that you and I were kind of in the trenches and collecting, there were so many names for the same thing at the time. Because initially, when a vinyl came out, that was the only way you can get it. But by the time we started collecting, by 1998, there were multiple versions of the same show on vinyl, and then you also had people putting shows on CDs for the first time too. So as we go along on this show, we're going to mention some names, what these shows were originally named. But at the same time, like, some of these shows have multiple names, and it's a little bit difficult to keep track. There used to be an awesome site called Kiss Bootlegged. It's no longer with us, unfortunately. But it sort of cataloged all of the original show titles and the original shows. So it was cool. It was so cool. Actually, I'm going to get something really quick. It sort of reminded me of one of the episodes of another podcast where they were making my friend. They kept on making him get up and get things throughout the show. So, are you aware of these?
Oh, Zodiac. Or no,
Yeah,
Godfather.
so God, that's correct. Which same thing, pretty much. But basically, what these were CD versions of some of the original shows that came out on vinyl. This is the one I really want to talk about, the Kiss carton, because inside here are the original, CD versions of the original shows. So, and there's my Destroys Anaheim, Part 1. And then here's what the LP looked like for Destroys Anaheim Part 2. So those are on. So those are in this box too. Straight out of Rolling Stone. So, yeah. So I mean, and like I mentioned, and this is from the early 2000s. I mean, this is probably 2004, 2003 that this came out. Maybe 2000. I've had this for a long time, and then it was followed up by this. Which again, we'll probably reference these over the course of many episodes that we're going to do. But this had the CD version of what was on the vinyl. So when this came out, this was to replicate those original vinyl releases. So I believe that when this came out, there was already an additional complete Anaheim show available on CD. But they weren't trying to reference that in here. They were trying to reference those original vinyl releases of the audio. Which
that's funny.
Packaging is
bootlegs
awesome.
Honoring bootlegs.
Well, I mean, think about this. This was, now people view bootlegs as a money-making scheme, which I never viewed it like that. I viewed it as a community because, I mean, Julian, you and I became friends because you traded me Foo Fighters bootlegs because I was just a big Foo Fighters fan. I still have those. But it was about trading shows with friends and about, what do you have and I have this and why is yours better than mine and can I have a copy of that? And I remember meeting friends and trading bootlegs, and I couldn't wait to get to the bootleg table at the conventions or record shows because there was going to be something there, and you always got to know the people selling them or trading them. It wasn't about where, hey, I got this and nobody has this, so you want it $5,000. It wasn't about that at that point. And I don't disparage people for doing that either, because there are things that people look at and find later on that we'll talk about some of those. But in the 80s, in the 90s, in the early 2000s, it was more so about making that connection with other people. And that's how you traded. I mean, people look at the back of magazines to buy bootlegs. But now it was, going to records, going to this. So again, super long-winded, but you had the Destroys Anaheim vinyl bootleg, and then that vinyl, the original 2-volume vinyl bootleg was replicated in the Kiss carton.
And it's funny, while we're going down sentimentality road, down on my side here, I do have my trader notebook from 1997 before I moved to America. And I'm still in touch and friends with a lot of the people whose names and lists of tapes that I owe for tape trading are in there. And it's changed now because it's become on demand. It's been instant gratification, whether it's through the download sites, whether it's being able to order online. But back in the good days, there was a community on AOL. There was the news groups, Rec Alt Music Kiss. There were a lot of lunatics on there, but there were a lot of traders. And then there were vines when you'd send out tapes and send them on and all. And it's really been a good ecosystem. I mean, sure, there are some lunatics, but there are also a lot of just really cool people who just want to listen to fun music and have a bit of camaraderie. When you meet up with someone, I had it at Madison Square Garden in December.
We had breakfast that day.
You meet someone for the first time at the end of the road, and you were trading with them 25, 30 years ago. It's nuts.
It's incredible. Yeah. It's incredible. And I just, the reason why I was so adamant about doing this show, and the reason why I was so adamant about doing other bootleg shows that I've been a part of over the years, was because it's not just about, oh, this is another Pro Shot Kiss show. Where did it come from? When did you first see it? What are the versions of it? talk about the history, what was going on with the band. So that's this show was born out of that, and I can't hit it home enough. Mention the Foo Fighters again. I mean, I think there's like 30 or 38 Foo Fighters singles, and on every Foo Fighters single, there's a B-side. There's more music that you can collect. Yeah, there's none of that with Kiss. So because there was none of that with Kiss, the collectors went to bootlegs, or at least that's what I did.
Yeah. Hey, we all get off with music in different ways. So Anaheim is an important show, though, in terms of history itself. It was one of the several stadia show that they did during the summer of 1976. It was, I believe, the biggest audience that they had performed to date, probably exceeding the Keishi Kaitin from March 1974, which has, it ranges from 30,000 to 100,000 people.
Yeah, everybody in St. Louis apparently was there.
Apparently everyone who was ever born was there. It's like people who track their ancestors to the Mayflower, that if the number of people who say they had ancestors on the Mayflower were all on it, the damn thing would have sunk in the harbor.
That's right.
So Keishi, was a big audience, but this is one that is legitimately quantifiable. It is a massive stadium in Southern California. It also is important because it is one of the best, well, we'll talk a little bit about the best representations of the Destroyer Tour, because that's only become available in the last few years, where you actually get to see all the production elements that were present in Anaheim in one video. You can see bits and pieces in others, I think, and you'll always correct me when I'm wrong.
I'll go back to my friend Gary Danko at the Rainbow Rockatorium. He used to have these things called, what was the name of it? Rare Bits and Pieces. He had these rare bits and pieces compilations where I think one of them had Houston 76, which at the time wasn't complete. Then he maybe had the On Colors of Largo 75. But on one of these rare bits and pieces tape was Black Diamond from Anaheim, which was shot from that faraway soundboard cam. So You got to see the production there. You got to see the fireworks show and all that stuff. So I thought that was really cool. And again, a couple of years ago, the full show of that angle hit the fan circles, which was awesome to see. But yeah, it was the first that was out there. And, Gary was part of that original group that was a bootleg dealer that shared this stuff with the fandom. So if anybody out there, I'm going to mention Gary so many times on this show. Gary's wife used to work with my mom in the public school system in New Jersey. And I was there, at that store every chance that I could. Every chance I could go. So yeah, so the Black Diamond only was the only song to circulate prior to a couple years ago. From that watch out.
And now that we can watch the whole thing, and you see where some cut shots come from that camera in the other ones. So
not many though.
Not many, but certainly a few, especially at the beginning, are present long distance. But it gives you a whole new way of looking at the show and looking at the Destroyer Tour itself. I mean, we can go into all the detail about how Kiss was transformed on the Destroyer Tour. There's a whole bunch of historical, contextual elements that are going on before they even go on tour that year. They've transformed themselves from alive into a completely new live act. They've created a new stage. They've got new costumes. They've got Glickman Marks as
I was just going to say,
manager.
It's the Glickman Marks takeover is what it is.
It's the takeover because they jettison a lot of the original road crew at that point. They start really, getting rid of the guys who, it's very similar with Aerosmith. A lot of the crew members who had been with them for a long time were deemed to be too close to the band members. And that wasn't good for business. And there were other factors that came into play as well, because JR continued to work for a coin, but not with Kiss at one point.
I mean, it was definitely their first foray. There was a thread on the FAQ a while ago, like, when did Kiss become a brand? And I was like, 1976. 1976.
May the 1st, 1976, in essence.
1976. Yeah. And then you had this great book that you're going to butcher me for that word. There's a great book that goes over all the chronology of what was going on at the time by Chris Lent called Kiss and Sell. He first saw Kiss, what was it, a month and 10 days before this, July 10th in Roosevelt Stadium, which might be shortly we talk about here at some point in time. But you definitely saw a change between what the band was in 1975 and early 1976 to what they became. This band that we're seeing on stage in Anaheim, California, 1976, wasn't the same band that played Cadillac High in October 1975. 100% no.
No. Nor would it be the same band that played in December 1976 either. You know, this Summer of Satan, as it's called for the Roosevelt show, it is really kind of an outlier because it's the only time where you really get the full, as originally envisaged, production, because it immediately gets changed after that tour, because there were elements that simply did not work. But here they all are to a great degree. And again, there's a lot of effects. The group's planned transformation from arena act into stadium headliner occurred prior to the engagement of professional business managers, Glickman Marx, or really the justification for such upscaling to such a degree. Engaging Glickman Marx, the band members signed individual power of attorney agreements on May the 5th, 1976. Kiss had certainly attained success with the Alive album, but had remained a regional phenomenon in many cases. In some markets they could pack arenas to the rafters, but in others they still struggled to fill the larger halls they'd become intimate with during 1974-75. With plans in the works from the time of the release of the Destroyer album, Kiss underwent a wholesale transformation as the Kiss Alive touring cycle concluded. It's interesting to note that on the classic red Spirit of 76 tour ad, that the smaller convention center was listed as the Anaheim venue rather than stadium. It's unclear why, since press and band tour itineraries noted the stadium, with a couple of other minor differences through the touring. The Comiskey Park date not being one, since that show was cancelled after the fact. However, a discussion on the venue selection and routing is outside the scope of this video. To set the stage for the Summer of 76 stadium dates, of which Anaheim was just one of a handful planned, it's useful to mention some of the other activities changing Kiss's overall presentation around this time. New costume designs had been debuted in the press in January and featured on the album cover in March. In fact, the group had worn the new costumes at their press conference. Songs from the new album were entering the set list as early as March, late February. Concurrently, Jules Fisher Associates was engaged to design a whole new thematic stage show, breaking from the established elements that had grown out of the homebrew ethos, which were by that time old hat and well worn. The core elements of a Kiss show remained, but they needed an update in presentation. They needed to be taken to the next level. The group also wanted more impact to complement what they were feeling on stage, that newfound confidence, that new sense of professionalism. It also needed to be built for the purpose of being visible in the larger venues that they hoped to continue performing in. Jules later told Rolling Stone magazine, Kiss wanted a destroyed city to go with their latest album cover. Kiss is not that intellectually deep, so Mark Ravitz and I created a stage set that would surround Kiss and make them look better. So we had a destroyed city constructed of 4 separate elements. We wanted an element for each of the band members' personas. Designer Mark Ravitz was assigned to the project, resulting in the visually striking, ruined cityscape stage that is featured in the Anaheim video. The company wasn't new to Kiss. They designed the Casablanca Coming Out party in February 1974 and had built the first Kiss logo used at the Academy of Music in 1973, along with the spider backdrop. Ravitz was designing a high visual impact stage show for larger venues that Kiss hoped to transition to. Reaching 44 feet in height, 14 meters, the fully configured stage presented a footage spanning 84 feet of floor space. That wasn't any different from the Alive staging. According to the April 1976 tour rider, with that stage presenting a 52-foot wide front with 2 16-foot wings, there was just far more stuff utilizing the 2,080 square feet of primary stage. Looking at Ravitz's blueprints of the staging, the core frontage comprised of the same 52-foot section. On the stage itself, the backline was 2 16-foot platform-covered amp lines, bass on the left and guitars on the right. Peter's central drum riser took up 13 feet, with the God of Thunder machine, also referred to as the third eye on one plan, placed directly behind him, positionally in front of the new Kiss logo. The God of Thunder machine has become a bit of an enigma, due to it being difficult to see in what videos and photos do circulate from the tour. The wide-angle shot of Anaheim clearly shows it rising behind Peter at the start of his drum solo tribal section until it was directly in front of the logo. It featured an 8-foot metal ring to provide the arc point for the electricity generated by the central device. The effect was activated as Peter's solo reached crescendo, continuing into the God of Thunder reprise, but from the wide angle it's clear that it was difficult to see the full effect. Peter did quite well in his static positioning, with the drum riser levitating 16 feet via scissor lifts, a safer and more controlled method versus the chain-driven predecessor, and he was given a pair of impressive 6-foot-tall black altar cats with electrified green eyes, providing a theme for his zone. As Black Diamond concluded and Peter's drums elevated, a silver mylar cat-eye drape unfurled to hide the mechanical infrastructure of his riser. Under a spotlight it almost appears electrified, though only the eyes were backlit. The confetti machine was flown slightly offset, directly above in front of Peter's drums and the ramp to the right of his riser. It was hidden by the cloud prop. Each side of the stage had 16-foot elevated wings. On Gene's side, with the spike prop on stage left. Gene's character was also represented by the serpent prop, known better as Sam. Initially, an 8-foot stage extension protruded from center stage with cliff edging. Stage lighting was predominantly provided via 3 30-foot man power towers, between which garland power line swags were strung. The KISS logo was overdue an update. The 4-foot-high one was bulky and heavy for its size. It had been fine for use in smaller venues, or flown when the band were an opening act transitioning into their initial headlining stage, and at times it had also been placed directly on stage. The new logo was 10 foot tall and 20 foot wide, sectionalized and foldable in the middle. It was also thinner, just 6 inches wide versus more than a foot with the lights on the old one. Rather than comprising of a solid face of lights, the lighting was arranged as a frame around the individual letters, which with newer technology could be controlled via lighting patterns and intensity as an effect unto itself. It was certainly vastly more manageable and impressive than its predecessor. And of course, 10-foot-high KISS Army banners flew from the towers. KISS was going big and supersizing their show, mostly in hopes of the success of Destroyer would firmly establish their newfound stardom. The highly theatrical show also set them apart from other direct competitors such as Aerosmith or Ted Nugent, both whom relied more on the power of their music, lights, and pure volume. Along with Glickman Marks came the splitting of Rocksteady into 2 separate business units in June, Rocksteady Productions and Allcoin Management, both of which would provide separate services to client groups. KISS received an impressive $100,000 guarantee for Anaheim. It was a huge amount, twice as much as they'd received for all the dates of their first European tour, so expectations were clearly high. But the group wasn't guilty of arrogance in the engagement. Fun Productions promoter David Forrest was confident, due to the coverage of acts such as KISS in the press and teen music magazines, that the ambitious booking was not premature. His confidence was such, having promoted the groups previously, that he penciled in a prospective second dates for the stadium shows he booked that summer. Of course, those dates could be used either for sales, if justified, or as a rain-out date, if needed. That sort of thinking would have gelled well with the band's ambitions and aligned with the sort of risk-taking favored by Neil Bogart. Video screens were mandatory for such large venues, as Gene told Rock Talk's Lisa Robinson. We only came on stage when it's dark, and we'll have 2 rear-view projection screens. Even if you're in the last seat of a 100,000-seat stadium, you'll get a clear view of the stage. Ultimately, Casablanca reimbursed Glickman Marks $12,000, covering the cost for the filming of the show. Fun Promotions had also learned to deal with crowd unrest during earlier shows of a similar type, and had a tightrope walker, Steve Unique McPeak, on hand to attempt a world record with a spacewalk over the Big A. Hot balloonist Captain Schlossberg inflated his 70-foot craft in the spotlights as dusk rose, but did little else other than generate blasts from his burners without taking off. Alcoin took advantage of the captive audience by renting blimps to advertise another one of his acts, Stars, then newly signed to Capitol Records. While the group didn't earn a percentage on the massive gross, they did sell $35,850 worth of merchandise during the show, including the new on-tour book, which included an iron on transfer for $3, which was a $1 increase over the previous tour book. The summer 6 shows certainly paid off for the promoters, with a total gross of over $3 million, with a combined attendance of over 318,000. According to Performance, the city of Anaheim did well out of the deal, netting $564,000 off various facility fees and parking. However, for KISS, by the end of the year, the show was only good enough to rank 15th on the top stadium shows of the year, and it ranks last in terms of the other shows performed at Anaheim Stadium in 1976. There's something else about the Destroyer stage that has been publicized this week. Have you been following the FAQ and a little replica thing that's
I was just going to mention that. Because David Peo over at Kiss Replicas is producing a miniature version of the Destroyer stage. And it looks fantastic. It looks so cool. And what's great about this is you never get to see a lot of these far away shots in high definition of the Destroyer stage. So it's very, very cool to see that. So head on over to kissreplicas.com. He's going to be appearing, I don't know when we're going to air this, but he's going to be appearing at Niagara Falls on the Canada side, Comic-Con here in a couple of weeks, and people are going to get to see this for the very first time. But it's 28 inches wide and little pewter figures that are 2.5 inches in height come with the actual stage set. So the pewter figures are in the poses for the Destroyer album cover. So yeah, I get they don't have guitars and everything, but still, to have a model of that stage replica is pretty fantastic. Very, very cool.
Yeah, and it's got, a lot of the elements that, and don't forget, you can see a lot of these elements that we're going to probably mention in passing in some points in the Destroyer box set. Reproduced the blueprints for the stage.
I got it right over there.
And yeah, try
There
and
it
make
is.
that show. If not, I'll pop it in. I mean, these are just old photocopies that I have. One thing I did find interesting looking at the stage, I was going through looking at the elements so that when I was watching the video, I could kind of reference where they were three-dimensionally on the 2D video.
Mm-hmm.
And I pulled up the 1976, the April tour rider. So it's very tail end of the Alive tour. It's not on the stage. It's the same width as the Destroyer stage, which really strikes me.
If you look at the actual, because people always assume that they had these giant stacks of amplifiers on the Destroyer tour, but if you look, the stacks are the same size on the Destroyer tour as they were on the Alive tour. So you had 2 cabinets and then 2 amplifiers on top of them. So this wasn't as what the steps became on the Love Gun tour, which we'll talk about, on a later video. But this wasn't giant like it was. They were still using elements of the older stage as far as blueprints go, or as far as like amplification go. This wasn't the what do they say in Chris Lunt's book? They wanted big, loud, and chrome. This wasn't that yet. It's getting there, but it's not that yet.
Yeah, this was big, loud, and foam.
That's right. And it's interesting to notice that all those foam pieces, they do end up, breaking apart, and we see them in a much better light on the Paul Lynde Halloween special during Detroit Rock City. Yeah,
and part of the problem with the stage is the lighting. Is all the lighting towers are kind of behind and above, where they're then relying on spotlights from the house. So it makes a lot of it visually difficult. And I would love to have been there in 1976. People, this is your podcast as much as ours to chime in with your thoughts, your correction, your firsthand accounts of what it was like to be in an arena or in the stadium watching Anaheim. What was it in terms of a visual experience to you, depending on where you were seated? If you were in the nosebleeds or the opposite side of the field, I'm sure it was just as bad as my experience at Psycho Circus in Dodger Stadium, where
keep forgetting you went to that show.
It's like binoculars, please, because you couldn't see anything, even with screens, even with the much larger stage and presentation in 1998. Well, relatively. It's interesting to hear from people who were there what they felt about it. But the lighting is fascinating. The towers are just make it very difficult to see. You can't see the foam elements and all the texture and detail that goes into it. But on the wide angle, now with some of the zoom shots, you can see with a lot more clarity all of those elements, which is really fun.
There's an excerpt in Chris Lunt's book where they said, you have the most visual band and there's no front lighting truss. That was corrected on the Rock and Roll Over tour, but on the Destroyer tour, there is no front lighting truss. There just really isn't, which is a shame. which is a big shame. So before we get into the show proper, let's sort of talk about the releases of this show in official capacity. Everybody knows that a cut was used for the Kiss Extreme close-up video. There's a little bit of Let Me Go Rock and Roll that is included in there. And this is a super, super hot, rare take that a lot of people don't know this. But when Monster came out in 2012, Walmart put out what was called a zine copy, which means it was a CD and it almost came like a little comic book. Now, if you purchased that, you were also able to download through the iTunes store the ebook version of the very same text that you got. So meaning you bought that text, you go to the iTunes store, and you could download that. At the time, the books application was only available on the iPad. So if you had an iPad in 2012, this is the only way that you can see that. And if you're going through there, there's a link where you can click on little videos. And in one of the links is Shout Out Loud from Anaheim Stadium. It's in the zine edition of Monster.
Damn it.
Do you not have that?
I have it somewhere. It's about 9x6.
Yes. But, I mean, obviously the video is not going to be in there. Let's see if I could actually, you know what? The books application is on, I believe it's on the iPhone now. And if I purchased it with the same Apple ID, it should be there. Well, look at that. The last book I was reading was Odyssey. Look at that. Well, look, there it is right there. So if I click on the Monster ebook, look, it's going to make me download it. That's how long it's been since I've read this thing.
So it still exists.
It would exist in your library, and I'm just downloading a local copy to my device, which is what I'm doing right now.
I'm trying to find if I still have my books on here.
All right.
Oh, I did.
So, look, and look, it's so funny. Here it is right there.
Shout it out loud!
Oh, hell. That's cool.
So how do you get to it? Okay, so if you're reading it, hold on, because I keep clicking on the video, and I don't want to click on the video. I want to be able to. Let's see if I go back. No, I don't want to go backwards. I want to go to the pages, table of contents. Okay, so if you're looking through it, it's on page 38. And then if that's page 38 of the Monster ebook, because at the time they were also
you got a message popping up, by the way.
Yeah, I don't care. They were trying to hawk the Destroyer Resurrected. That was the big thing. So then if you go from page 30 to 39, then you get to that's Anaheim, and then you play it, and there it is. Shout Out Loud.
Shout it out loud!
Wow. All right.
So I was curious about that, not because I wanted to buy the album. Again, I can't tell you how many versions of Monster I bought, but I was curious because every time that Kiss puts out something in an official capacity, I'm always not concerned, but I'm curious as to what the quality is going to be. Because as we mentioned in the last show, unfortunately, the quality of a lot of the shows shared on the original Kissology were not the greatest. This one's no exception, but it sort of proves that Kiss was aware and had ownership of the show. So meaning, did they not like it? Is that why it wasn't included on Kissology Volume 1, even as a bonus disc? Maybe check out Kissology Volume 1. There's no show from the Destroyer Tour represented on there. Our only representation is Paul Lynde and the So It Goes. And, I mean, people don't consider that European tour of the Destroyer Tour, but it actually is because it happened after the album. And there were Destroyer tracks played in there. But I'm always curious as to why they deemed this show not good enough.
The intro?
You talking about Gene falling down the steps?
No, I'm talking about Flo and Eddie.
Flo and Eddie? All right, we'll talk about that. I know you don't like them. Neither do I.
Okay, so the show had multiple opening acts. There was Montrose, Bob Seger. Montrose replaced Uriah Heep, who were supposed to be opening it. And Flo and Eddie were MCs of many an act in Southern California. Flo and Eddie, of course, were comedians. They were former members of the Turtles. They were
Not the
probably
Ninja Turtles.
Nope, not the Ninja Turtles. No Pete's or Michelangelo. They were much funnier, I guess, in 1976 if you were Cheech and Chong, because I find them annoying to no end. And they were able to wear an amalgamation of Kiss makeup designs. Superman, a yellow cape, not Superman, more like Howard Stern.
Was it like big? Yeah, it looked like Buttman. Yeah, that's right, like
Yeah,
Buttman.
Buttman.
Was it Ass Man? I can't remember if it was Ass Man or
Ass
Buttman.
Man.
It was Ass Man.
Yeah. And Flo does all the talking. Who's that? Mark Warman or something like that. And it's the most horrendous ad-libbed intro. Peter Chris, Ace Frehley, and then they're going, and Gene comes down the stairs.
Falls.
And I never noticed it. He falls. He face plants, and he comes up through the fog like a creature from the Blue Lagoon.
It must have. So go back and watch this. This is on the multicam version. Go back and watch this because you could clearly tell when he's coming down the steps. All of a sudden, you see him, then he's gone. Then he pops up again. He must have missed a step because of all the fog.
Yeah, no, he saved it very well coming up out of that fog. I'm like a creature, and I'm just like, keep going, knock that fat guy off the stage. The fat guy wearing yellow. Okay, that guy, not me. So, yeah, it's a really bad intro, but I really think I'm probably being unfair because I guess you really had to be there. You had to be a teenager smoking a joint in 1976 to get it,
or not even just a teenager, but just be there.
Yeah,
because if you listen to the original bootlegs, which are audience recordings, they were communicating with the audience throughout the whole length of the gig. I mean, prior to Kiss going on, telling people to move back. Because if you listen to this bootleg, they're telling people to take a step back because I guess people were getting crushed up front. So I guess you had to be there. And I wonder if they were in makeup the whole day, like emceeing the event. I wonder if they were the MCs. I don't know.
Yeah, and they did a photo shoot with the group that made it into the trades and into other magazines at the time. So yeah, they were doing it. And the announcements about get the fire marshal isn't going to let the show start unless you are in your seats and all that. That's common on bootlegs. We can hear that in Memphis in December as well. Mm-hmm. So I mean that wasn't uncommon. But I just find the not having the standard intro kind of not as cool to me, where again you have to be dazed and confused to really enjoy that sort of intro. I guess.
Good movie. And remember too, just thinking about this, not even thinking about this with 1976 goggles on, but think about this with 1985 or 1990 goggles on. This was the only complete Destroyer show at the time available on video. Yeah, Houston had been out there. I'm not sure when Houston actually reached the circles, but Houston wasn't complete until years later. So this one was the only complete show, and it doesn't have the proper intro. So missed opportunity.
Now let me ask you something, because I know this is probably opening up a can of worms, but we've been friends for a long time. You've made multicams of other shows.
Yeah.
Do you think it's feasible to construct a multicam utilizing the now new discovered or newly leaked wide angle, the existing as good as it gets multicam version, and add in shots from, say, Houston?
Yeah, that can be done.
Any way around it?
Yeah, that can be done. I always, I mean, here's the thing. When I made the original Greatest Show on Earth back in 2018, when I took the Houston shows and the Largo shows, put them together and made them one, I took some artistic liberties to try and make it look like one single show. What I'm doing now is I'm trying to keep the show as I'm trying to keep the shows as they can be. So could it be done? Absolutely. Okay, that's better.
All right, we're back. I've got a fresh change of background too. So, Yeah, so let's get into talking a bit more about the show. Again, opening order was Bob Seger, Montrose, then Ted Nugent. Sorry, Uncle Ted, I forgot all about you. Flo and Eddie was billed in their own right. There was also other activities going on in the stadium to entertain the audience during act changeovers. There was Peak McQueen or whatever his name was. The high wire um, artist who did a walk across the high wire across the infield successfully for a world record. Apparently, he had been arrested the week before walking over the Grand Canyon. There was also a hot air balloon on the ground that was inflated and didn't take off and then was deflated. And the newspaper reviews are inconclusive as to whether it left the ground much or not. So there are other activities going on in the show, but let's talk about the show.
Yeah, I want to mention one thing that we haven't mentioned yet, that this was discovered. I mean, we knew it happened, but it was kind of brought to light through a social media video a little while ago. But Eddie Kramer was on hand to record the show. For what purposes, we don't know. We know that he was paid to mix the show. And then what's the origin of the video? Did Eddie posted something about being in his archives, and we saw the box Kiss Anaheim 77.
Yeah, no, that was not necessarily in Eddie's archive. There was a video that was a tour of Iron Mountain's vault, and it was predominantly a lot of Aerosmith stuff was showed in that. But they stopped by one aisle, and it had Dress to Kill reel that you could read the details of the date, not the track, but I know from the billing sheet which track it would have been. And right behind it were two 2-inch reel boxes of Anaheim. So they definitely have a multi-track or they were using 2-inch media to record. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was recorded as multi-track, but more than likely he was hired to record the shows. Professional video was hired for this show. What purpose? When they put an audience bootleg on the Destroyer box set, why didn't they include a soundboard that they have multi-tracks for? One very important point. Eddie Kramer got a lot of points for his work with Kiss. In 1977, he earned like $330,000 in 1977 money just off his points, which was something like $2 million off Kiss product. So why would they? He probably still has a valid contract for that material that he was hired. In fact, the parts of the contract that do circulate make it very clear that if it was going to be used, he was going to be paid. So
that's interesting.
Why wasn't it used? Well, listen to the performance. That will give you probably a very good hint.
Well, I don't know if I agree with you on that one. And, maybe I had my rose-colored glasses on for the New York 77 performance, but I listened to the soundboard recording of this, which I know we hit really hard on the original Destroys Anaheim bootleg, but the soundboard recording did begin circulating within fan circles in 2014. It was either on one of those Zodiac or Godfather, whatever you want to call it. It was either printed in Europe or in Japan, which is where most of these bootlegs.
It was Japan. It was called Unnecessary Evil. It was a Zodiac release. It was really outstanding in terms of sound quality.
So, so that's the version that, because while we were, preparing for this episode, I watched both versions of the video, but I also listened to the soundboard recording. And I got to tell you, I think the band sounds good. What's missing from this show that the New York 77 show had is there was like a lot of gusto, they were playing fast. I thought they played really well at this show. I really did. What did you notice as far as performance?
Well, I agree with you to an extent. It starts off as a train wreck. Detroit Rock City is terrible.
The bass player fell down the steps. So.
And the mix is off.
The mix is bad.
And again, this is a band that's running around on stage. This is a band that has members who are theatrically involved in their performance, not just standing there. But once they settle down, it takes them about 3 songs to really get up a full head of steam. And then they're like a train. And they are actually very powerful and attractive gentleman on stage.
Oh, come on.
I mean, the stadium is as big as a gymnasium. It's so impressive. No, they sound
I
they
quit.
really no, they sound really good, and I really don't have a lot of complaints, but particularly some of the videos have a very bad audio source.
Yeah, it's interesting to
You
note.
only really have that corrected when you listen to the soundboard. And again, I don't know whether that is a soundboard or whether that has any relation to those magical reels that are sitting in Iron Mountain's vault.
Yeah, we don't know the origination of this soundboard. We don't. Here's what I do know. So the original bootleg of this, that I don't know where the audio source came from, but the original VHS bootleg of this had what sounded like a soundboard recording, or at least some type of recording, but mix was all a mess. Couldn't hear Paul's vocals the first couple songs. Sounded like complete and utter ass, which didn't sound good. Video wasn't good either. So you had the original audio that came from the video, and then you had the audience recording, Destroys Anaheim, that also differed from the original video. And then now we add a third source, which is the soundboard recording. That differs from all three. That all three differ. So you have three different audio sources of the same show. And even the soundboard recording, that initial mix in those first couple songs, it doesn't sound great. It's a hell of a lot better than what was on the original video. Hell of a lot better.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And I think the original video is a monitor mix rather than a soundboard as such. That's a guess. I have no idea. I just know which one sounds best to my ears, and that's the one that came out. The soundboard. And fortunately, fans have married that up with the video, and it's pretty decently synced. I mean, it's near perfect. It's not 100%, but it's a really vast improvement to listening to the raw or watching the raw videos. But then again, you do get a certain amount of patina to those. That's how I remember first hearing it, when I had it on a VHS tape after coming to America and being able to have these videos in my collection. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what's imprinted on my brain, rather than something that is shiny and clean and near perfection as it's going to get.
Yeah, you guys got it good now. The people that are coming into trading and collecting now really have it good because they have their choice as to what they can listen to. We didn't have that choice. I remember when I got this, I think I bought the first VHS off eBay because Gary at the Rock Trim didn't have this one at the time. He was like, oh, I sold my master tape or this or that. So I didn't get this video from Gary. So I got it from someplace else. And this wasn't, when I got it, it wasn't a Kiss Vision video, that nonsense. So that didn't mean bunk in my eyes. But it didn't have the Kiss Vision logo in the beginning of the video. Who cares? That
didn't mean anything to me. I was just trading tapes. I mean,
yeah, but you need to understand something too. So by the time you came to America and by the time you started collecting, when did you actually start collecting videotapes? Was it 99, 2000?
When did I get off the plane? February 98. As soon as I had an address in the U.S. and access to a VCR.
Even in 1998, the whole Kiss Vision VHS tapes, it's long gone. Long gone.
Oh yeah.
Those Kiss Vision tapes were in the early 90s. And that was like, that at the time was the gold standard of what was good or bad. But then you had fans shooting the reunion tour. Those weren't ever Kiss Vision tapes. But I guess what I'm saying is, this was never, for me, this was never a Kiss Vision tape. I had a really crappy VHS, and then it was upgraded. The video was upgraded later. Actually, on one of the Peter Arquette Mishmash compilations, I think I had like the first 7 or 8 songs from this. That was better than any video I had at the time, but it wasn't the full show. So I had that, and then I got the full video. But again, if anybody out there who's watching this and who's been sticking with us for the last 40 or some odd minutes, if you're looking to pick up this show for the very first time, you're going to want to track down the soundboard audio. You're going to want to do that. And then it's married to the soundboard video. But it's interesting that this is one of those videos that wasn't used and abused as Houston 77, Detroit 76. I think it's interesting to note that a lot of the original TV ads from Rock and Roll Over used Anaheim footage.
No,
And
maybe that was the purpose of hiring. Well, it wouldn't explain hiring Eddie, but
or hiring the video. So yeah, so a lot of those it was heavily used then. But aside from that, like this didn't appear on those video releases.
no, they had to have video for a large stadium. There's no way that you're going to do a show without it. One of the other things that's interesting on this is Paul's hair, and it was a feature of all the Destroyer tour. Is that little skunk streak that he had that matched Joe Perry's, and it was very Keith Richards 1972 and Mark Bolinish. Like, that never made any sense to me. What was he?
Made no sense to me whatsoever. No sense to me whatsoever.
Did he see Joe Perry, or did Joe Perry see him? Or because I equate that with Keith, which means I think it's more Joe can do a Keith than Paul Stanley. No offense, Paul, but you're more Jimmy Page guy.
That's true.
All right, let's go back to the songs.
Where the stars came from. Okay, so Detroit is the opener. Right into King of the Nighttime World. Gene messes up the chorus, the very first chorus, because he just repeats the line of the chorus twice. So there's that. Then we're back into my favorite song.
King of the Nighttime World?
No, Let Me Go Rock and Roll.
Well, can I say something about King of the Nighttime World? There's flash pots at the beginning. It's like the only pyro that you see at the beginning are two little pots of flame smoke come up from the elevated thing above the ramp, above the amps on either side. Whoosh.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
It's only about 5 foot tall, but there's very little pyro. You have the fog in the intro, and then you have two little poofties, like little amp farts of flame, and that's it. It's all lighting.
You're right about that, because there were flame stacks during God of Thunder.
Mm-hmm. Later, much later.
Mm-hmm. Then there were the concussions during Detroit.
Yep.
You're right about that. I never realized. That's such a fascinating point, because when Kiss came back on the reunion tour, they were more concerned with not doing exactly what they did before, but doing what we remembered that they did before. And we remembered, oh my God, there was flames and fire in every song. But there wasn't. So it's interesting. That's a really, really good point. That's a really good point. I didn't pick up on that.
That's the only good point I'm gonna have for this whole episode. Let Me Go Rock and Roll. Really fun. They're starting to hit their stride musically. King was a little better than Detroit. They're, Ace in particular.
I'll say this about King too, because there's that choreography that a lot of people may or may not know about during the end, where Gene and Ace go on the steps and they're doing the side things in the choreography. So that you see that more on the wide shot than anything else.
Yeah, again, both of these are critical viewing if you want to experience Anaheim. You got to see the full picture and see the close-ups, because then you get so much out of it. And it's nice just to sit there and fixate on it. Ace is interesting, and I can't talk much about it right now because the Ace book is coming. But he played remarkably well for that day. I will say that.
Yeah, you're at a time where Ace had more good days than bad days. And then, we get down later on in his career, maybe even into the 90s, where he had more bad days than good. So here he's having more good days than bad.
Yeah, sure. he could still play, but you could still see a certain amount of leaden fingers at points during this. It's not the case during Let Me Go Rock and Roll. What really strikes me about this, it's the first time Paul really intros a song. It's a great one to get them going, because it's good time rock and roll. No balls.
And then again, this was the clip used on Extreme Close-Up.
Was it?
Let Me Go Rock and Roll.
Okay, I don't remember details.
You know me when it comes to video, and then because we are going to do Cobo Hall 76, where I have a ton of notes on Cobo Hall 76.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of notes on that one. What I like on Let Me Go Rock and Roll as well is the camera work on capturing Gene's leaping crab leaps. My hips actually broke while watching those. I'm like, how has Paul Stanley's had hip replacements? How has
and rotator cuffs
and rotator? Well, yeah. How has Gene only had facelift and none of the other kind of stuff? That guy was jumping around in those freaking boots with that bass and those high spider kicks that he would do as well. Oh my God. It's amazing.
Cookies.
Freak of nature.
Oh, he ate cookies and they healed him.
Cookies. All right. Strutter.
Great performance of the song. It sounds very, very similar to how it was represented on Kiss Alive. And even though the song was rehearsed for the Rock and Roll Overture, it's sad that we wouldn't see this song again until the Unmasked tour.
Yep. Yeah, Paul knows where the cameras are by this point. That's something that I kind of pick up on, because he's looking, he's mugging, he's comfortable now. He's off his showman MC kind of rock star. Ace is on fire. Now
right, you got to put this clip in because this is so funny and you got to do this. So there's something called Kiss Shreds. Have you ever seen that? Kiss Shreds?
I think so.
Where it's the I Was Made for Loving You video, but they put a song in over it, but they made it's like bad lip reading. There's a part of the song where they dubbed in Paul going, "Where's the camera? Oh my!" And he's looking at the camera, and it looks like he's saying, "Where's the camera? Oh my!" It's probably the funniest thing I've ever seen as far as Kiss goes.
Where's the camera? Oh my!
And even people that don't like Kiss think it's funny.
We'll put a link in.
Where's the camera? Oh my! So funny.
Hotter Than Hell. I don't really have much to say about it. It's meat and potatoes Kiss.
It's the best Kiss solo in recorded history.
No.
Mm-hmm.
No.
100%. That outro solo I can never play that loud enough. And when they started doing that on the acoustic, not the acoustic, but I guess the soundcheck meet and greet on the last 50, and they were doing Hotter Than Hell, and got to choose my two favorite songs, and they're playing that solo, and Tommy's just ripping the hell out of that solo. Man, I really regret not being able to see Ace do that, because obviously Ace was the originator of the solo. But that solo, hands down, my favorite Kiss solo, the best Kiss solo of all time. Love it.
Okay. Well, I was just getting off listening to Strutter, so whatever floats your boat.
Oh my God, love it. Love it.
You know, people got to remember there are no wrong answers in Kissstry. So
except saying that one's bad because it's the best.
Okay, well, it just didn't do anything for me. But it is a great segue into Nothing to Lose.
Nothing to Lose.
Yeah. Just cowbell kicks in. Peter's the boss there. He's doing the cowbell. They're looking at each other like a band. They're communicating with their eyes. Gene comes in on his bass. Paul comes in, and then off they go to Wonderland. I mean, it's really a great transition, but it's also great just to see a working band working musically to get in sync.
Great performance. Obviously, many years later, this was a magical moment on Unplugged, and definitely a missed opportunity not being played in the reunion tour. But the song was great, and I thought this is a great version of the song. It's always great to hear the Catman. And actually, when you watch the original multicam version of this video, this is the first time you see Peter on camera during these call and answer sessions. Nothing to Lose.
Yeah, that's the whole problem with a lot. I said it about the Madison Square Garden video. It's like they almost forget that the drummer needs a camera of his own, especially when you have a drummer that's not just providing backbeat, who's an integral part of the sound vocally. You know, whether it's on the backgrounds or singing lead, as Peter does, several times during a set. So, Cold Gin. I have never been a big fan of Cold Gin, but these performances, and this one is absolutely, it's fire, but it's also a complete, you're not really, it's okay. Cold Gin as a song is not important as much as it is a launching pad for Ace's solo. It's all a setup.
That's exactly. I was just going to mention that. This is here to make, because Cold was written by Ace. That middle section, the da 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 da, Gene wrote that part, and you could tell the songs that Gene writes because you could almost put an orchestra in there with like horns. I could almost imagine a horn section playing that. So you could tell that Gene wrote that middle part. But this was an Ace written song going into Ace's solo, so I understand why it's there. It's fine. We'll talk later on how his solo got tagged on the end of different songs. I do really appreciate that they got rid of the last chorus on this and started his solo. I really, really appreciate that.
And what a great solo. And you can only really appreciate it with the soundboard, because once you hear the phasing, some of the other, I think Echoplex is in there, a lot of the stock FX that were used by the group, and there weren't a ton. No. It's just volume. It really is guitars and volume.
It might just be a two screamer too.
Yeah. But just the sound of the guitars on the soundboard, it's a pyrotechnic orchestra, his solo, and just, the flaming, the cutout still smoking away, just being left on stage. It's just so evocative. Again, I wonder how much a person in the 40th row could actually see of any of that.
Well, they saw it on the screen, hopefully. Another interesting part about the solo is when you watch the wide camera version, the cameraman loses where Ace is when he comes back on stage, because he's on that little platform over on stage left, and he's that's where he's continuing the solo. And then the cameraman's like, "Where the fuck is he? Where is he?"
Pop-up basement.
Yeah. So they don't know where he is, because then Gene shows up on his side, later on. So yeah, the solo is good. I actually listen to this solo a lot of the times when Ace is a solo. I skip over them. Not because I don't like it. I'm a songs guy. I want to hear songs.
Yeah, I agree with you to a certain extent, but again, when I'm focusing in on this soundboard, it really jumped out at me. I was like, wow, that's really good playing. That's really good work by the crew to get those effects dialed in as cleanly as they're coming across. So I was appreciating it a little bit on a technical level. For a guy whose guitar only has 3 effects, it was hitting me in the right place on the day that I listened to it. On another day, I might be skip.
You'd be like, hotter than hell. Yes, hotter than hell.
Hey, I'm a Kiss fan. My opinion changes by the minute. If we start over, I got other shit to say. It's just. But today I'm also going to say something good about Shout It Out Loud. It's short and sweet.
It is short and sweet. This was supposed to be the anthemic single at the time. I could do without the video effects on the multicam version. I thought they were kind of cheesy. It kind of took me back to what they were trying to do in Largo 75, which if anybody has seen that, they know that there's some cheesy effects on that. So, but yeah, I've watched this song the most because, like I said, I watched it in the Monsters Zine edition. Which is still there, but yeah, I mean, it's fine.
All right, what's up next?
Do you love me?
You love me.
Do you love me?
Great
so
drums.
You got two new tracks from the album back to back, which really kind of hit home how strongly Kiss felt about this album, even though they were still a relatively new group. They didn't play that many songs off Hotter Than Hell when that ultimately was released, and then even less when Dressed to Kill ultimately came out. So the fact that they brought in so many new tracks from Destroyer, back-to-back new tracks from Destroyer, because this was an important time for the band because they didn't want to become a one-hit wonder after Kiss Alive. So knowing that they had this record and knowing that they were going to put in so many new songs in the live show, I think it's a testament to how strongly they felt about these songs. And again, these songs, they lasted the test of time. I remember in '96 when Do You Love Me came back after being ignored from the set list virtually since 1977. I remember when Do You Love Me came back, people were freaking out over this song.
It's a good song. I mean, I find Paul very distracting on this one as he's starting to go a little over the top with his facial expressions. It's like Paul Stanley's trying to be Gene.
Where's the camera? Hi.
Well, no. It's like, I don't need the camera. I want that person in the 15th row to be able to see my face, and then overdoing it with the, very kind of artistic ethos. So
Mm-hmm.
it's cool. And again, my only other comment is, again, the guitars sound fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
They, again, so important to the songs. I mean, God of Thunder, which is up next, is the last of 5 songs from Destroyer. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they're all in with this album. They've
Mm-hmm.
released it. They've had second thoughts about it in the immediate aftermath of recording it, and listening back to it, they're like, holy shit, everyone's heard the Jack Douglas story, about how phone calls were being made to Jack Douglas to come in and salvage this album because Bob Ezrin has done something absolutely horrible. So there was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of doubt. I think Glickman Marx and professional business managers really transform it and give them more belief. But the album's it's not a runaway success at this point.
No.
Um, they've let off with Shout It Out Loud as the first single. They've done Flaming Youth. They've even put that in a picture bag in the US. Detroit Rock City is out by the time of Anaheim. And those singles are either duds or outright flops. Detroit Rock City is a flop.
Well, can you blame it? Can you blame it? Because have you listened to the single mix of Detroit Rock City? What a
No, you
weird
can't
edit.
blame it. It's horrible.
It's a horrible edit. It doesn't. When they open the show with that song, it's awesome. When I hear that single, I'm like, what garbage?
Yeah,
I would have flipped this over. I was just pissed off. Like, I flipped this over. So pissed off.
No, flip it out the window.
No, I flip it over first, and then I flip it out the window, because then I flip it over and I hear Beth. So then it was coming.
No, it's out the window. It's like the guy who was doing the edit on that was having a seizure cutting tape.
Had to be.
Because it's a hatchet. It's not an edit. An edit has function. You're taking pieces out and sometimes moving things around. This thing is malicious butchering.
An edit has finesse. This has no finesse. None.
Yeah.
None.
This is chopping down a tree with a Mack truck.
None. But getting back to God of Thunder, while we wrap up the set list here, I think Peter Solo is great. The wide shot, you get to see, what do we call it? The Frankenstein machine.
Well, the whole song is great. It's a fantastic blood sequence. Terrible bass sound. I just want to say that. Horrible bass. And then Peter goes into a solo, and towards the latter third of the solo, when he starts doing the tribal section, Frankenstein machine, or God of Thunder machine, comes to life behind him. It raises up at the beginning of the drum solo, but doesn't go into action until then. And it's sucking so much power out of everything else is dimming, and you're getting like these little tiny electrical farts. It's so unimpressive. I don't see how it ever got on the road with them as an effect, because it was so anemic. You can't see it. I mean, you want to see it like a whole Tesla coil, have these 80-foot electrical sparks going up like horizontal lightning. Instead, it's like fart.
It works just about as well as the laser curtain during the Dynasty tour.
Oh, shit. So it's a great concept, but it's sucking all the power. What did Peter Criss think, having that thing behind him going? Because you can actually hear the energy as well from it. So it's discharging a ton of energy. I've got the electrical plans for the wiring grid for that. It is sucking a lot of juice to no real purpose. It's hot wired.
Yeah,
it's a hot patch. It's straight in. So it doesn't serve any purpose, but again, it was a brilliant idea to try and bring these elements. The stage had all these zones. I mean, you just see Gene Simmons. Ooh, Frankenstein movie, 1930s. Frankenstein machine, I like. Give me a cookie.
That's how you're gonna get. That's how the knees are gonna keep, because it's cookies. For some reason, my audio recording excludes Rock and Roll, and I really didn't care that it did. But there is another piece of production. The confetti comes down during Rock and Roll Night, which previously was coming down during Let Me Go Rock and Roll on the Dressed to Kill in the live tour. So I guess this is the first time we get a proper confetti storm during Rock and Roll Night, which is cool. Paul smashes the guitar as well. Again, that was done during Let Me Go Rock and Roll back on the Destroyer, the Dressed to Kill in the live tour. So that's cool that's there. But again, that's Rock and Roll Night. That's all I'm going to say.
There's another effect that's first really visible in Rock and Roll All Night as well, and I don't know if it's only visible on the widescreen or whether Eagle Eyed will spot it in passing.
Are you talking about the Kiss Army banners?
No, those are a key part of the stage. The garland strings between the electrical towers.
Oh yeah.
Little Christmas lights going, just red lights strung across. I mean,
well, remember, because you had those strings of lights, but then on the Dress to Kill and Alive tour, they had the lights that framed the stage, like a picture frame, like old movie marquee style lights that they had.
So it riffs off an idea of how to frame it. You've got these three massive power towers, which are your lights. 2 are manned, 1 is not. Then you've got lights strung in between it, so that provides you a frame. And to make it a little bit more interesting, you hang 2 Kiss Army banners, and they are beautiful.
3.
Were there 3? 1 on each tower?
1 on each tower.
Okay. I can only see 2 towers at a time.
Well, because if you look, so you got the 1 tower that's almost directly behind Peter's drums, which sometimes was moved directly behind Peter's drums. Mm-hmm. So you had the 1 tower there. Then you had a tower by Aces. Then the tower by Gene, it wasn't on an angle. It was almost facing directly into the stage. 3 towers, 3 Kiss Army banners.
And just looking at the blueprint, 44 feet high, the staging.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Massive. All right, so Rock and Roll All Night, the band looks satisfied at this point.
Yeah.
But you're only, I think, at 48 minutes into a performance, which is just shocking that the band was only contracted for 75-minute shows at this time, when in 1996, 2 hours, just over 2 hours.
The Entertainment Weekly article says it's 1 hour and 58 minutes.
So Kiss never did the massively long sets at any time during their career.
I mean,
94, 95, maybe.
No. It was 92 when 1990 was the first time they were on their 2 hours. And then 92, it was 27 songs. Look at those early Revenge shows, like the Bethlehem Revenge shows, not the club tour. I'm talking about the proper arena show. They're 27 songs. It's quite a bit of songs. No solos either. I mean, you had the thing between Eric and Bruce, but no bass and no Black Diamond solos. So so I think the Revenge tour holds the record. But it wasn't until a Hot in the Shade tour that it was actually a bona fide 2-hour show.
Yep. All right, Deuce.
Very weird part. Very weird place for this. After this was the opener, and now it's the first encore.
Yeah, and also wrapping up the show with 3 songs off the debut. 6 songs from the debut, 5 from Destroyer. And I think that just stands the test of time, that those 2 albums provide the core of Kiss's catalog to the end of the road. And I'm not complaining about 6 songs from the debut.
No, not at all.
The selections from Destroyer, I wouldn't be complaining about either in any way. And Deuce is... it's the best section of the show, the start of Deuce for me. It just, again, Deuce is my song. But Gene's aggressive, and it's taking it to a different level than just, and now we'll play Deuce. No, it's now we'll play Deuce.
Now we're going to play fucking Deuce. And now I'm going to spit fire after Deuce.
Yep.
I thought that was weird. I thought that was weird because the first time I became aware of the set list of this was on the Kiss Rocks the World magazine. There was a section on bootlegs in Kiss Rocks the World, and it listed the set list for Anaheim. And I was like, why is Deuce and Firehouse last? It's got to be wrong. I thought it was wrong initially because I was so used to Deuce being first and Firehouse being 5th. So I thought it was so weird that these songs were back-to-back in the encores.
Yep. Well, Firehouse, I think one of the highlights is just during their break, as this is second encore, so off they go again, is just how the camera's left focusing on Peter's drum head. And it never gets old. Just very cool. But also the intro and the makeup's half missing from Paul Stanley's face. He's worked. I mean,
it was hot that day. It was hot.
It wasn't that hot. I checked the weather.
But I think it was the humidity that is what killed it. Because look at and this is like super, super nerd shit, but looking at their hair in the backstage photos, you could tell how human it is by how like just disgusting looking their hair looks.
Well, Southern California. It's disgusting down there.
The capital of surf and sin. That's what he says. That's what he says. But yeah, they're at this point they're cooked, and then Gene does the flame, which, I mean, it looked good. It looked good.
It looks even better on the wide angle. Where
Yeah,
you can
the
actually
wide
see
angle.
the height. He gets some height off that flame, and again, it's just to see him do that. It is dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
But just see, he's going around. He's checking that wind. When he finds,
yeah, because you got to blow that. You got to blow that fire into the wind for sure.
Yeah. No, the demon was lucky that he didn't get us burned more than he did.
That's true.
And then the conclusion, the crescendo of the whole show, Black Diamond. And this is where, again, the widescreen really sells itself because you're getting to see the production rather than close-ups and individual shots. So you get to see Peter's riser go up.
Ton of bombs going off here because there's all those bombs in front of the drum riser that are going off.
Yep, and you get to see the drapery and the new drape in front of the drum riser to hide the scissors. Actually has electrically lit eyes, and it's mylar, like 1-inch mylar doing the outline of the cat. So under the spotlight, it looks like it's electrical. And I had actually confused that I thought that was the God of Thunder machines down there. That's what it is, because that little piddly zappy thing couldn't possibly have the name God of Thunder Machine. That zappy thing. It's God of Thunder Machine, and it goes, no.
Yeah, I mean, this was the way to finish the show. Clearly, with the additions of the additional risers on the Love Gun tour, it took this to another level. But seeing the drums go up and seeing that there's that other city and the other Kiss logo that's up there, you have the clouds and the lightning bolts going. Some of those things survived into the Rock and Roll Overture because you can see some of those things, at least the lightning bolts in Madison Square Garden. But I don't know if the city was there. But to see that city and to see it like light ablaze, and then following the song, you had a fireworks display.
Just I was doing comparisons. That's from the Rider from the fall '76 tour. You know what's still behind Peter? The God of Thunder Machine.
How did I think? Because they were probably like, it's going to work one day. And when it does work, it'll be amazing.
This time, it's going to work.
Listen, 50% of the time, it works 100% of the time.
This is like Spinal Tap. Perhaps if we turn it to 11, it's going to work this time.
Yeah.
You just see some technician laboring over it. But Jules Fisher was in Rolling Stone magazine and quoted that most of the elements that were abandoned from the Destroyer staging were because Kiss's crew were inept. It wasn't that the effects were too much for most venues to handle, and they shrunk that stage.
I have another one, man.
Yeah. Hey, they sold it to them. It worked. You get a great conclusion. The city starts off with an explosion of flame. So it just appears out of a flame ball, which is cool. And again, that second logo up above everything, you get to see the lightning bolt, which is, I think, I don't know if that's
lit two or three?
Electrified. There are several of them. There's a cloud up there hiding the confetti machine. Because the confetti's right behind that, kind of offset. And I'll punch in there's a little extra documentary that I'm going to knock out to include in this to talk about some of the staging rather than turn this into a 5-hour episode now. But again, very cool conclusion. Crescendo, yeah.
What are your final thoughts on this show?
It was great to sit back and revisit it, but it's great to kind of revisit any of these videos with purpose now that the band is off the road. Now that the band is kind of done, it's making these more meaningful and important to me as a Kiss fan who wasn't there, which is why I come away from this with a ton of questions. What was someone who was 16 years old in 1976 thinking about Flo and Eddie, or someone in the 23rd row or the 99th row thinking about the production? How were the video screens? How were the people who were there really enjoying it and consuming it? And how does that compare to what they've been able to watch on YouTube or on a VHS over the years?
It's amazing that this survived this long. It's amazing that this was captured, and it's amazing that we can just watch it anytime we want now. Amazing.
Yeah, and just to think that the soundboard didn't come out until 2015,
14.
2015 was the Zodiac to wider audience, I believe.
I'm not sure when I got it. I think I got it in a trade like in 2012, I think.
I mean, everything was circulating privately in little circles, but
the mass was.
Yeah, I'm talking about the masses here, not anyone who had early access, because, again, once it's out on a silver and it's been given that treatment, it kind of legitimizes it to everyone. Everyone is now equal and now has the same thing, regardless of when it first surfaced and versus when it eventually got out. So, and the same goes for the wide of the video, which we've only had a couple of years to enjoy, and I'm still digesting all that.
Yeah. But what a cool show! What a cool time to be a fan. It was very cool collecting this show. Getting the vinyl, getting the Kiss carton, getting the original video, getting the soundboard video, hunting down better versions of it, trying to see this as best as it could be seen. So this was a fun one. I have a lot of fond memories with this one for sure.
Well, my only hope now is that the fourth version of the audio surfaces, which is, of course,
Eddie Kramer's,
the 2-inch multi-tracks, or even Eddie, I'll take a 1/4-inch mix down of those if you mix it.
Yeah, I'll take one too. Yeah. We'll take 2.
All right. Any last thoughts, or?
No, I think it's time to kick everybody out of the Inner Sanctum, and we'll invite you back soon.
Yeah, so get in there with your comments, your corrections, because we do this on the fly. We do make errors, point them out, point in your additions of things that we haven't mentioned, point in your firsthand accounts or what your elder siblings said, anything that you want to add for other people to learn from your perspectives on it. We look forward to reading your comments, and I want to thank everyone who's commented on previous episodes. We do appreciate it, even the corrections, and even if you're taking the time to hit us with a zinger, we do appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for watching.
Yep. All right, that's it. We'll see you soon. Los Angeles Times, August the 23rd, 1976. Friday's bill at Anaheim Stadium was stylistically as consistent an American hard rock lineup as you'll find. The quality, though, ranged from the honest, personable, driving rock and roll of opener Bob Seger to the crude courting employed by the headliner Kiss as the buzzsaw soundtrack for its visual extravaganza. The Kiss sound, which draws heavily on the old grand funk aesthetic of volume and excess, could be attained by any basic bar band appropriately equipped and harnessed. Music, of course, is not the cornerstone of the group's success. Image, presence, and attack are the keys, and on those grounds, Kiss delivers to the complete satisfaction of its audience. It's a dazzling, superficial entertainment, a sort of stylized, non-narrative Alice Cooper show, calculatingly programmed for maximum effect. In his prime, though, Alice achieved a posture both amusing and genuinely threatening, a combination Kiss never gets near. Its pace and energy are fine, but there is no spontaneity or tension, no personality beneath the grease paint. Ultimately, Kiss must be chided for not being obnoxious, but for being utterly innocuous. The Anaheim Bulletin, August the 24th. Orange County's 4th consecutive huge summer rock show successfully provided some 40,000 Southlanders with a full, satisfying day of emotionally charged music at Anaheim Stadium this past Friday. Headliners Kiss, plus Bob Seger and his Silver Bullet Band, Ted Nugent, Montrose, and other attractions combined talents and presented more than 6 hours of music, which was enthusiastically received by the youthful crowd. By the time Kiss finally made their appearance, the crowd was fully primed. Kiss is a 4-member glitter band whose entire presentation is built around visual impact and loud music. Their faces are masked behind grease paint, applied to create outlandish characterization. On stage, they unleash a large measure of energy running about the showcase, swirling, making faces as they strum out their songs. This, combined with panache, lighting, bursts of flash powder, and other visual excitements, coalesce to form an entertaining, if not qualitative, experience. Kiss fans have heard the embellished story about Beth. You know, the one where the song languishes on the B-side of the Detroit Rock City single. Released as the third and likely final offering from the album, it was a resounding dud. And then, like magic. At the time of the Anaheim show, the Destroyer album was in the final week of its initial 20-week Billboard Top 200 chart run. It dropped off the following week, leaving Alive and The Originals as the only albums representing the group on the US charts. All that effort, all that suffering recording the album with Bob Ezrin, and it hadn't even cracked the top 10. It certainly wasn't the follow-up the group were hoping for following the success of the Alive album. Flaming Youth had not set the charts on fire, nor did Shout It Out Loud. Detroit Rock City may have been a regional novelty, but reality persisted. Kiss was not a singles band. And then something magical happened. Beth started to gain airplay traction. Portland, Spartanburg, Birmingham, Montgomery. AM radio liked the song, and it was soon in rotation with the likes of Linda Ronstadt and Hall & Oates. Myths and stories aside, the result was clear. By September the 4th, Billboard recognized the change, and the Detroit Rock City single re-entered the Hot 100 chart at 79 and became a double A-side with Beth listed first. Casablanca ran a trade ad proclaiming the single a smash. For one industry brain, the explosion in airplay was such that he pondered whether the album's sales figures, which lagged behind chart positions when reported, would also translate from the new popularity the group was enjoying. It certainly revived the fortunes of the album, which reappeared on the charts for an additional 58 weeks and was certified platinum by the RIAA on November the 11th. The single also went gold on January the 5th, 1977, and won a People's Choice Award the following month. Kiss had been transformed into Super Kiss, with a single with only a sole member of the group. Where Gene had proclaimed that Kiss was a guitar-oriented group, it was now inevitable that the song would eventually be added to their set. It was just a matter of how and when. But in Anaheim, the group were still enjoying the pleasures that even just being plain old rock stars afforded them in the Californication summer.